session we are going to discuss the HRD efforts in telco. It produces commercial vehicles and a number of other products. Its turnover is more than 1400 crores, about 38,000 employees. The Jamshedpur plant, which was set up first in this corporation, has about 23,000 employees. The company, started by Mr. J.N. Tata, has been influenced by his philosophy. Of course, the environment has been changing for the organization, as it does for most other organizations. In 60s and 70s, the organization grew very rapidly. Early 80s was a phase of slower growth, tougher competition, changing market conditions, lower profitability. In this context, and also considering that in telco the employees are considered a part of the telco family, a number of initiatives and efforts have been taken in the area of human resource development. And Mr. Suresh Gandhi, who is with us today, the resident director of the Jamshedpur plant, has personally taken many of those initiatives. So we would like to discuss with him what the philosophy, the strategy, and operations of HRD in telco organization have been. Mr. Gandhi, would you like to enlighten us about the HRD efforts which have been made in telco in the recent past?
Well, in the recent past, there has been a considerable change in our thinking on human resource development. In that, during the 60s and 70s, which you talked about earlier, when we were really growing very fast, it was more a question of dealing with industrial relations problems rather than talking about human resource development. At that time, we were chasing production targets. We were trying to catch up with the vast demand for vehicles, and therefore not that much effort was given to human resource development. Today, when we're in a position where we have to meet more competition, we have to consolidate our gains, we have to maintain certain standards of excellence and efficiency. What we are talking about is all-round human resource development, not only for managers but for workers, developing new skills, teaching new skills, creating an environment where people who don't have degrees will use their spare time to gain qualifications so that they can better themselves. It's a whole new ballgame, you might say.
What have been the components of this HRD system?
Well, it started off with, as it happens in most places, started off with management development. We started off by conducting several blanket programs, what we call. There were fixed programs which were given to all our managers, 3,000 of them, just so that a common base level would be established. But then certain other concerns started emerging. For example, we were introducing new technology, new machines, and our workers didn't have the skills for this, so we had to think in terms of worker retraining.
This is for the CNC machines, or
well, it could be for CNC machines, it could be for the more sophisticated conventional machines even. But we had to find ways by which we could retrain thousands of workers each year. As you mentioned, we have about 22,300 actually people in Jamshedpur, and of these 18,000 are workers. And we wanted to create a situation where each worker would go through at least one training experience every 2 years, so that he could keep on updating his knowledge and skill. Now, conventional methods were no good for this. So what we had to really do was we had to devise training modules, which were like building blocks. We'd first assess the present knowledge of the worker, the present skill, and then prescribe for him various modules in various combinations, so that he would achieve a certain skill level at the end of a few days or maybe a week or so. And through this means, we have in fact been able to give training interventions to 10 to 12,000 workers each year. Apart from the additional skill that this has brought about, it's amazing how much of an upsurge of interest and enthusiasm this has created, because we find workers who come after working hours to ask the training department people that, I have this problem, can you please explain it? So it's created a whole new environment. We have to do similar things for our managers. But in doing all this, we have in fact created a few things. Firstly, I think managers and workers have got closer together, because many of our interactions have included both groups together. They are able to speak more openly and more freely with each other. The traditional alienation of middle management or lower middle management, I hope and think we are reducing considerably. And overall, the atmosphere in our works has changed substantially.
Now, in terms of other components, we understand that you started a suggestion scheme, you started a target setting process at the divisional level. You also wanted the line managers themselves to become part of the training, or rather to get involved in training themselves.
Well, it happened, again, we fell into one thing as a result of something we tried previously. For example, the involvement of our managers in the training process came about in two ways. Firstly, we were running so many programs that we just didn't have the men to man those programs. We initially tried getting people from outside, but found that they didn't have the knowledge or the information about telco. We started getting feedback from our managers that the courses are too theoretical, they won't apply to the shop floor. So what we started doing was getting some of our managers who we felt had a way of communicating to run programs themselves in their areas of specialization. And today we have a panel of maybe 50 managers in different fields of specialization, whom we continuously tap for various programs. In addition, we have training coordinators in each division. So apart from the training programs that the training coordinator arranges for his men in the training division, they are running their own programs in their own divisions. So the whole thing has snowballed. And today, I would say that maybe 80% or 90% of our training is in fact done by line managers.
And it is a massive amount of training.
It is. In the area of suggestions, this was not so much as a result of something. It's just that I got fed up of seeing just 1,000 suggestions coming every year from a workforce of 23,000 people. I happened to make a trip to Japan, and I was checking with some of the people there, and they said that they normally talk about one suggestion per man per month. Now this was a lot different from what we were getting. So I came back and I spoke to my managers, and we identified ultimately that basically it was a management problem. We were not enthusing our men to suggest, and therefore we weren't getting the suggestions. So we decided to start working on this, and we got our managers, our supervisors, everybody in on the game. And sure enough, the suggestions started pouring in. Then came the question of how do you process them fast enough so that the enthusiasm remains. So we had to decentralize or change our whole suggestion handling mechanism. Previously, a suggestion could take as much as 2 years to be processed and rewarded. Today, it's done in a matter of days or months. So the man feels the reward more immediately, and therefore gets motivated to give some more suggestions.
Incidentally, what is the reward system?
The reward system is it's a percentage of what the company benefits. But we also have a clause for innovation, because you might have some suggestions made by a chap in the maintenance department, which is very innovative, but it doesn't result in a very large-scale saving. So we give him a reward for his innovation also. The other point that I want to make on suggestions, though, is that it's brought about a closeness between the manager and the worker again. Because one of the things we first noticed was as the numbers went up, the percentage of suggestions that were accepted dropped, whereas previously about 30% of the suggestions used to be accepted. It came down to about 12%.
Because of very large number of
So, no, because people were just giving in suggestions for the heck of it. See? So we got together with our managers and the chargeman and the foreman and all the rest and said that why don't you talk to the chap before he gives in a suggestion. Let him come to you and show his suggestion, guide him, help him so that his suggestion becomes a little better. And in this way, it's brought them together. So it's had a lot of other side effects, good side effects.
Now we understand this, you try to involve your division in their own target setting process, and the targets are not just limited to the traditional targets of production or sales or profits or productivity, but goes much beyond that.
Well, our target setting system came about because for a long time I felt that one of the main problems that most managements face is communication. The manager thinks that he has told his subordinate that he expects something of him, but the subordinate thinks that he's supposed to do something completely different. And at the end of the year, whereas the subordinate comes into the boss's office expecting a reward, he's given a kick in the rear end, which is a little bit demoralizing. So we felt that if we had some mechanism where everybody would get together and decide on what are the directions they wanted to go in, who was going to be made accountable for what, where did the division in fact want to go. There are certain targets that they have no control over. For example, the production targets come to them from sales or from somewhere else, and we all follow the same target. But there are many other targets, like, for example, wastage of material, rejections, the health of your machines, costs in your division. There have been certain non-conventional things, like in certain divisions they've found that they have a few colleagues who are alcoholics, and they would like to sort of bring back to normal life. There are people that accumulate massive loans, and when they start they start skipping work because they don't want to be caught by the Kabuliwala outside the gate. So these chefs have taken targets to try and redress that sort of a problem. So, but basically what the division does is it tries to analyze its environment, the environment around it. Firstly, the immediate environment in terms of its own division, the sister divisions around, what are the threats or opportunities provided by them. Then based on the situation as they've analyzed it, they select 3 or 4 or 5 key areas where they want to concentrate.
And they change year?
They might change every year. It might continue over a couple of years. In fact, this year I've tried to change things a little. I have given 3 areas for the whole plant. I've said you can use as many other areas as you want, but these 3 have to be common to the whole organization. So everybody will be working on these 3 areas because I feel they're important for Terco Jamshedpur, and each one will take some of their own. The 3 areas I've selected this year are total quality control, total quality, optimizing operating costs, and optimizing the organizational profile, which I feel are 3 important areas for the Jamshedpur works. But in addition to this, some people might take manpower development, some people might take time management, some people might take health of plant and equipment, depending on their own circumstances also. Once they've set their targets, they present them to their top management group and their sister divisions. And then we have a system where they review their work every 1 month in their own divisions. And every quarter they present their review to the Deputy General Manager who's looking after their work. And then once in 6 months they make a review in front of me. So that we have this continuous system of reviews so that we can make mid-course corrections depending on situations, the changes in the environment. And to see that maybe some place you have to give some additional help of a certain sort in order to allow a division to achieve its target. Another division may not need the same help. So these sort of little corrections you can make. But what it has done is it has brought the whole organization to thinking in terms of goals to be achieved.
Achievable results.
Yes. And the other thing that we are doing, which hasn't completely gelled yet, but it's happening. Under the divisional management groups, we have departmental management groups. So the departments see the divisional targets and set their own targets, which should add up to the divisional targets. And this we've allowed to come down to the foreman level also. Then we have our workers and our chargemen who have started forming small groups, like quality circles. Okay. And they are working on objectives or targets which they set for themselves. The departmental groups feed to the small groups that these are the sort of areas in which we would like you chaps to work. Why don't you start using your own innovation or imagination to solve these problems. So you have these men also working on the same thing. And ultimately, I would hope that all 22,000 people in Jamshedpur would be working towards certain specific goals, which are for the benefit of the organization, is also for the benefit of the Terco family.
Mr. Gandhi, this is very interesting because you have thought about HRD in a very integrated fashion. You must have used some behavioral processes or specific methodologies to bring it all about.
I've tried virtually everything. I've tried T groups, I've tried target setting, I've tried anything that has really caught my fancy. But basically what we're trying to do is not copy the Japanese or copy the Germans or the Americans or whoever it is. we're trying to really evolve a management style that is unique to Telco Jamshedpur and ideally suited for its personality, you might say. We're really working towards, you might say, an indigenous management system, which I feel is very important. If you see the Japanese, this is, to my mind, the only reason why they've succeeded, because they haven't copied the Americans. They've used American techniques, but they've made them thoroughly Japanese, so that today the Americans are using Japanese techniques which used to be American techniques, you see. So this is basically what we've been trying to.
And in terms of any measurable results, what has been the impact of these HRD efforts? Because I understand your strategy was to improve your competitiveness through this HRD effort.
Well, it's difficult to tell straight off the bat like that. But I think it has had an effect. Today, our men are far more responsive. We don't normally experience the suspicion that exists between manager and worker. When we go and tell our men that, listen, we're losing money because of this, they accept it. But they might question us a little, but they accept it. And then they come out with ideas that, all right, why don't we do this, or why don't we do that? For example, we had a tradition which was age-old. It was started, I think, mainly when our German collaborators were with us. That in our press shop, the workers changed their safety gloves every shift because they said the sheets are full of oil and the sheets cut the gloves and this and the other, so we have to change the gloves every shift. When the financial crunch started coming, we identified this as one area where we were wasting a lot of money. So we went to the workers and said, listen, your gloves at the end of one shift or at the end of 1 week are perfectly good. Why don't we change this? And they changed it. So straight away we were able to save thousands of rupees.
Now that you have mentioned it, what has been the role of the unions, the union leaders, or the workmen themselves in these HRD efforts?
They've been, by and large, partners with us. At least I don't believe that a union has to get up on a soapbox and start shouting against the management for it to be effective. In fact, I personally feel that the faster we get rid of this we and they nonsense, the better for all of us. And we have tried to create an environment of collaboration between our unions and us. There are some people that say that our unions are puppet unions as a result of which. That's their problem. The unions are have got more for our workers than most other unions get for their workers. At the same time, they've ensure that we improve productivity standards, we improve our own internal relationships so that we deal as a family. And the overall result is far better than most other people who take a confrontationalist attitude are able to achieve.
Did you organize some training programs also for the union people?
In fact, there was resistance in the beginning. The union office bearers thought that it was below their dignity to come to a training program, but once they came to it, they were so happy. And here I must say that our General Secretary, Mr. Gopeshwar, has been very constructive in that he himself has been designing through the Metal Workers Federation and the Metal Workers College training programs for his men and for his committee members. And we collaborate in that also.
Now, sometimes you use this term that we should call it human relations at work and not industrial relations at work. What exactly you imply by that in your Telco Jamshedpur context?
Well, when you talk about industrial relations, traditionally you always talked in terms of confrontation of management and union, we and they. which I personally think is outdated. When you talk of human relations, you're talking about the relations of everybody, be they workers or managers. You're talking about a family. You might have a couple of tips in the family, but so what? You resolve your problems and you go about working together. And this is what we really want to bring about. Collaboration more than just fighting with one another.
And in all of this HRD work, have you faced any dilemmas where you might have to choose between one or the other strategy or tactics, or dilemmas in terms of the impact of it?
I suppose it always happens. And most times we don't even think of it as HRD. Basically, you're talking about managing a show the best way possible. And very often things come instinctively, both among my men and among my managers. We might be going in one particular direction, and suddenly I'm in the shower and I get an inspiration or some such thing, so I go and chat with my chaps and say, why don't we try this? And they say, fine, let's go ahead and try it. So it's basically a question of trying to optimize management. We happen to have categorized it into one little box called human resource development, but it's basically optimizing management.
But from all of this effort of aspirations and ideas and methodologies employed, is there some general learning which you would like to share which might be useful for the managers in other corporations?
It's difficult to generalize on things like this, but I think the one generalization that would apply is that we are doing too little with our human resource, and very often we pay too much attention to our technological or physical resources, when both in terms of money as also in terms of worth, net worth, the human resource is so infinitely more important. And I think what managers basically have to think about is managing, not dictating. And once they start managing, then they have to deal with human beings. But this has to start at a low level. Unfortunately, many of our educational institutions teach our young chaps to hide behind technology, to hide behind rules. You can't manage when you're hiding behind something. You have to learn to relate with people. You have to learn to be honest and open with them. And as long as you're honest and open with your people, they're honest and open with you.
Would you like to add any other comments about the style of management at Telco, or
nothing really? Nothing.
Well, thank you very much then.
Thank you.
It's been a real pleasure discussing this with you.
Thank you, sir.